There is this this incredibly strange, almost suffocating moment that I think almost every successful person eventually experiences. And it's probably not the moment you might think it is.
Right. It's not the big blow up.
Exactly. It's not this grand cinematic falling out with your inner circle. It's just, well, it's a shift. You're sitting across from someone you've known for years, maybe a friend you used to split cheap pizzas with back in the day, and they make a joke.
Yeah.
Only it doesn't really sound like a joke anymore. It sounds sharp, like passive aggressive. Or maybe it's just the quiet realization that a friend who used to text you every single weekend has just slowly stopped reaching out, leaving this weird, unexplained void.
It is a creeping realization, really.
Yeah.
You wake up and realize the people around you have started treating you fundamentally differently.
Yeah.
You haven't had a fight, you haven't betrayed them, but the ground rules of your relationship have changed simply because, well, you found some success.
It is such a universal phenomenon, yet it feels completely taboo to talk about openly. Nobody wants to sound ungrateful, right? So today we are pulling from a really deeply insightful excerpt from a text called The Social Currency of Success.
It's a fascinating piece.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore the hidden social costs of success, to look at why money quietly rewrites the unwritten rules of friendship, and most importantly, how you can tell if your own relationships are built to last or if they're just, waiting for the wind to change.
And to do this justice, we need to immediately discard the tired Hollywood cliche that money makes people evil.
Right, the cartoon villain thing.
Exactly. That is such a lazy narrative. If we want to understand what's actually happening in these strained friendships, we have to examine the psychological incentives, the subconscious expectations, and the altered perceptions that actually drive people apart.
Yeah.
It's a far more complex dynamic and, frankly, a lot more tragic than someone just turning into a jerk because they got a big promotion or launched a profitable business.
Well, the source material hits on something that really surprised me. The fracture in a friendship, it doesn't happen when you buy a luxury car or when you move into a massive new house or the day you sell a company.
No, it happens way earlier.
Way, way earlier. It happens in these very specific, almost invisible micro moments. We just mentioned the funny joke turning passive-aggressive.
Right.
But the text also points to the friend who used to be your absolute biggest cheerleader, the person who celebrated your smallest victories, suddenly changing the subject the very second you mention a recent win at work.
Yeah, that pivot.
It's like realizing the temperature in a room dropped without anyone touching the thermostat. You think you're imagining it at first. You tell yourself, oh, they're just having a bad day, or I'm just overthinking this.
The instinct to rationalize that behavior is incredibly strong because acknowledging the temperature drop means acknowledging a crack in the foundation.
And nobody wants to do that.
No, you want to believe the baseline of the friendship is secure.
Yeah.
So you look for literally any other explanation for the awkwardness. You blame stress, you blame lack of sleep, anything other than the reality that your success has become a wedge.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Because isn't the stereotype that the rich person is the one who changes? The cultural assumption is almost always that the person who acquires wealth or status becomes arrogant. They lose touch with reality and just stop caring about their old friends. Why does this text focus so heavily on the friends changing?
That gets to the absolute core of the psychology here. Money rarely creates entirely new personalities out of thin air.
Okay.
Instead, it alters incentives and completely rewires the way people perceive one another. Two friends can have a decade of history, literally a million inside jokes, and still slowly become total strangers without ever having a single shouting match.
They just sort of drift into separate orbits?
They drift, but there is a distinct gravitational pull pushing them away from each other. It's not because the successful person woke up one day and decided to be arrogant. It is because success quietly changed the fundamental architecture of the relationship itself.
The load-bearing walls shifted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the things that used to support the friendship are no longer there, or they've been replaced by new uneven pressures.
So if no one is arguing and no one is intentionally trying to be hurtful, what exactly is shifting? Where does this fracture actually start?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to travel back in time a bit. Think back to your school days to understand the foundation of almost all early friendships.
Oh, yeah.
The bedrock of those early bonds is equality.
The source describes this school day's baseline so perfectly. Like, think about it. You are wearing similar clothes, you probably live in similar neighborhoods, you're dreaming similar dreams, and you are facing the exact same mundane problems.
Passing that math test.
Dealing with a strict teacher, figuring out weekend plans. Nobody cared who paid for lunch at the cafeteria because no one had any money anyway.
Right.
Nobody was measuring success because the metrics hadn't even been invented yet for you.
And that equality naturally eliminates judgment. That is what makes it so profoundly comforting. When everyone is in the same boat, facing the same direction, with the same limited resources, no one feels left behind.
Yeah.
No one feels like they're losing the race.
Yeah.
Psychologically, being surrounded by equals signals safety to our brains. We are part of the tribe, we are secure, and we don't have to constantly assess our standing.
And then someone hits fast forward on the tape.
Right. Imagine those exact same friends 15 years later. The trajectories haven't just split, they have shattered into completely different stratospheres.
It's wild to see. You see one friend become a highly successful entrepreneur, another goes to med school and becomes a specialist.
And then someone else is perhaps bouncing between temp jobs.
Right, struggling to find stable work in a tough economy. And another one is just buried under a mountain of student loan or credit card debt.
So that old friendship is now carrying a psychological weight it was never designed to hold. These people are living in completely different realities.
I think this is where I get tripped up and where a lot of people struggle when they experience this. Why can't they just talk about the old days? I mean, if they have 15 years of history and they survived middle school together, why does the money matter if they still genuinely care about each other? Can't you just leave the bank accounts at the door and just be friends?
It's a beautiful, idealistic thought. It really is. But it ignores the reality of human cognitive load. The friendship is now burdened by profound contrasts in daily existence.
How so?
Well, the text gives us incredibly vivid examples of this. Picture two friends having coffee. One of them is internally stressing out about their growing investment portfolio, tax liabilities, and managing a team of employees.
While the other.
The other is silently panicking about making rent next week and affording a car repair.
That is a massive chasm. They are sitting at the exact same table, drinking the same coffee, but they might as well be on different planets.
Exactly. One person wants to talk about the stress of buying a new business, while the other is literally wondering if they can afford groceries. How do you authentically connect when your daily survival metrics are that far apart?
You really can't.
Their conversations slowly begin changing. Not because they stopped caring about each other, but because they stopped sharing the same world.
That makes sense.
The successful friend starts censoring their stories so they don't sound boastful. The struggling friend starts hiding their anxiety so they don't sound like a burden. It becomes exhausting to constantly filter your reality so you don't offend or depress the other person.
It turns every single conversation into a minefield. You are constantly doing this mental gymnastics to figure out what is safe to say. And that leads to this unavoidable psychological trap, because it's not even about the money itself. It's about what the money represents in terms of your daily lived experience.
Yes. And psychologists have a very specific term for what happens when those disparate worlds collide, which is social comparison.
Okay.
Humans are deeply, inherently wired to compare themselves to those closest to them.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source brings up this striking example that I think everyone can relate to. If you were scrolling on your phone and you see a billionaire, say Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, buying their 4th private jet, you feel absolutely nothing.
Zero.
It's just noise. It doesn't impact your self-worth at all. But if your childhood friend, the one you sat next to in homeroom and who used to cheat off your history tests, buys their absolute dream home, that triggers intense, almost visceral emotions.
What's fascinating here is that this comparison doesn't ask for your permission.
Right.
It happens automatically below the level of conscious thought.
Yeah.
To understand the why behind this, we have to look at evolutionary psychology.
Okay.
For thousands of years, our survival depended on our standing within a small local tribe. If resources were scarce, being at the bottom of the tribal hierarchy meant you might not eat.
Oh, wow.
So, the human brain evolved a mechanism to constantly measure its social standing inside a local group. It's constantly asking, am I ahead? Am I behind? Am I succeeding? Or am I falling behind the pack?
It's like how Zillow works for real estate, but for your self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
You don't compare the value of your three-bedroom house to a massive castle in Scotland. You
Yeah.
compare it to the house 3 doors down.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Right. If your neighbor's house suddenly doubles in value because they added a pool and a new roof, you don't just say, oh, good for them. You immediately start wondering what's wrong with your own house and why your property value isn't keeping up.
That is a brilliant analogy. Your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, they are your benchmark for normal. You don't benchmark yourself against a celebrity because they aren't in your neighborhood, socially speaking.
Yeah.
When a peer suddenly leaps ahead financially, it alters the math of your own life. For some people, that breeds incredible inspiration. They see their friends succeed and think, if they can do it, I can do it.
But for others,
But for many others, it breeds deep, uncomfortable insecurity. It forces them to look in the mirror and ask, why not me? What did I do wrong?
which perfectly explains the passive-aggressive jokes. The room temperature dropping. It isn't malice, it's the insecurity leaking out. When they make a snide comment about your new car or your promotion, they are just trying to balance the scales in their own head.
Precisely. The brain feels threatened by the sudden disparity, and it reacts defensively. By minimizing your success, or framing it as just luck, they protect their own ego from the pain of falling behind the benchmark.
Let's follow that thread because we've moved from these internal feelings of jealousy or insecurity to actual external changes in behavior. If this social comparison is happening below the surface, how long does it usually take before it bubbles up into how they treat you tangibly? Because it can't stay hidden forever.
To see the contrast in behavior, we have to look at what the text calls the baseline of being broke.
Oh, the broke baseline. Think about your own group chats from college or early in your career. Life is incredibly simple. When everyone is broke, your friends treat you like one of them because you literally are.
Right.
Nobody's asking you for a business loan. They are asking if you can spot them $5 for a coffee.
Huh?
No one expects you to buy them expensive gifts or pick up a massive bar tab. Everyone is in the same trench, fighting the exact same battle.
During that phase, the social contract is purely egalitarian. But then you get promoted.
Yep.
Or you build a successful business. Or you start that investment portfolio. Maybe you simply become more financially responsible and disciplined than your peers. The text notes that at first, nothing dramatic happens.
People congratulate you, they send a nice text, they say they're proud of you.
They do, and it is usually genuine. But success has this invisible creeping side effect. It completely changes expectations.
The source lists these behavioral shifts, and reading them felt uncomfortably spot on. Suddenly, you're at a group dinner, the check comes, and there's this pregnant pause. Everyone is looking down at their phones or looking at you.
Yep.
You are expected to pay for the whole table because, quote, you can afford it.
Or consider how the nature of the phone calls changes. You aren't being called just to hang out on a Tuesday night anymore.
Right.
You're being called for business advice, for career networking, for investment tips, and yes, sometimes directly for money. You transition from being a peer to being a resource.
A resource. That is such a stark, slightly depressing way to put it. You become the person everyone calls when they need help, rather than the person they call to just, be friends. It blurs the boundaries of the relationship entirely.
It really does.
You start wondering, are we hanging out because you like me or because you want me to look at your resume?
This raises an important question, though. Is helping people wrong? Should you refuse to help your old friends?
No, you shouldn't do that.
No, of course not. The core problem isn't the act of helping. The danger, as the text brilliantly points out, is the psychological shift from gratitude to entitlement. It is when generosity metastasizes into expectation.
That is the crucial turning point. The favor that once sparked genuine gratitude suddenly becomes a baseline entitlement. Let's say I bought dinner the last 3 times we went out, purely out of generosity.
Right.
On the 4th time, if I ask to split the check, I'm suddenly the bad guy. I'm viewed as stingy or withholding.
That happens because of a psychological concept called habituation. When a stimulus like a free dinner is repeated, the brain stops processing it as a novel reward and starts logging it as the new status quo.
Wow.
The expectation is shifted, and this is one of the hardest, quietest lessons that successful people have to learn. As your wealth or influence grows, the number of people who genuinely need or feel they need something from you grows right alongside it. If you aren't careful, the friendship is entirely consumed by utility.
I feel like we need to take a breath here because this is getting incredibly heavy. If you're listening to this and you're working hard to get ahead, to build a better life, to invest in your future, are you just destined to lose all your friends? Does wealth just ruin the purity of everything it touches?
Not at all. That would be a terribly bleak way to view the world, and it really misses the most crucial distinction the source makes.
Okay, good.
Not every friendship becomes weaker. In fact, some become incredibly strong. Some become unbreakable.
To the bright side, so out of that group chat from your broke days, who actually survives the transition?
The friends who genuinely celebrate your progress without automatically comparing it to their own status. These are the rare people who clap the loudest when you win. And they aren't clapping because your success benefits them financially or because they want you to buy them dinner.
Right, they're not looking for a handout.
They are clapping because your success genuinely makes them happy.
Yeah.
They have decoupled their own self-worth from your net worth.
The text notes that these friendships become completely priceless because they're built on respect instead of comparison. It reminds me of that Warren Buffett quote the source highlights. It's better to hang out with people better than you.
It's a profound rule, and it speaks to the mechanics of a healthy friendship. The right friends do not compete with your growth.
Right.
They don't try to pull you back down into the bucket. They encourage your growth. They use it as fuel for their own journey, asking, how did you do that? Instead of, why didn't I get that? Or they simply admire it from a place of secure love, confident in their own path, even if it looks entirely different from yours.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening to this on your commute or while walking the dog, how do you audit your own life based on this knowledge? The core takeaway here, the real synthesis of all these psychological concepts, comes down to understanding what your relationships are actually built on in the first place.
Yes, absolutely.
The text leaves us with this incredibly powerful framework, shared circumstances versus shared values.
That is the ultimate litmus test for any relationship. Many friendships, especially those early ones we talked about in school or early adulthood, are built almost entirely around shared circumstances.
Right, like you lived in the same dorm.
Exactly. You worked at the same miserable entry-level job. You were broke together. You frequented the same cheap dive bar.
It's just proximity and shared suffering. You were friends because you were physically next to each other and dealing with the same annoyances.
Precisely. But when those circumstances inevitably disappear, when someone moves to a new city, gets a massive promotion, or builds wealth, the entire foundation of the relationship disappears with it.
Wow.
If there is nothing else holding it up, the relationship quietly collapses. The friendships that survive the introduction of wealth, or any major life change for that matter, are the ones rooted in shared values.
Values like what?
Character, ambition, humor, mutual respect, intellectual curiosity. Those traits endure, regardless of what the bank account says or what neighborhood you live in.
It is so vital to recognize that it is completely natural for relationships to evolve as your realities change. You shouldn't feel guilty if a friendship built merely on geographic and financial proximity starts to fade when you succeed.
No, not at all.
It just means the circumstances changed and the scaffolding fell away. If anything, recognizing this makes you appreciate those shared value friendships so much more. You hold on to those people for dear life because they are rare.
It does. It forces you to look at your social circle with a much more discerning eye. But if we take everything we've just discussed, how wealth changes incentives, how it breaks the comfort of equality, how it triggers social comparison, and how it shifts generosity into expectation, it leaves us with a rather haunting inversion of the whole concept.
It almost makes you wonder about the inverse scenario. Like, if success breaks that baseline, does losing it all put the pieces back together?
Think about the reverse of the entire text. If acquiring wealth strips away all those friendships that were based purely on shared circumstances, what happens to a person who suddenly loses all their wealth? If a successful entrepreneur goes bankrupt, or someone loses their high-status job, do all those old shared circumstance friends magically return?
That is fascinating. Like, do they welcome you back into the fold because you're broke again?
Or does the mere experience of having had wealth, of having crossed that boundary and lived in a different reality, permanently break the illusion of equality forever?
Yeah.
Once that room temperature drops and the dynamic of comparison has been introduced, can you ever really turn the thermostat back up to the way it was when you were naive and 15?
Wow. That is a chilling thought to leave on. Can you ever unring the bell of success? Once you've seen how people treat you differently, you can't unknow it. That is something to seriously mull over the next time you're out to dinner with old friends. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning the dynamics in your own life, and critically evaluating the world around you. We'll catch you on the next one.